Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into another one of our financial topics. This is one from the perspective of men, issue that they're going through. We've been doing a series of topics like this where we say about top issues that men are going through and that women are going through. Some with finances, some with dating. And so this one is about finances for men. And the heading on this one is decoupling of milestones, houses, marriage, and delay adulthood. So essentially kind of separating those traditional milestones you would think of from like this delayed process where trying to get it or attain it is hard and we're not doing it at the stages that we traditionally think we should be doing it. So diving into the deeper aspect of the discussion, data shows that more than half of millennials and Gen Z are delaying major life milestones due to financial pressure. So obviously you want to hit these milestones, but financially, just the way of doing it in this economy is almost impossible. For young men, cost of real estate or traditional wedding costs pushes the timeline back. This causes a feeling of stagnation, affecting the feeling of being successful during traditional time markers. So, and everyone kind of really deals with this. Like I said, this is a perspective of men, issue that men are dealing with. And it's that feeling of, can I get to that point that I want to be at this time frame? But I don't have the finances. I think a lot of this also goes back to, like I've said in previous videos, that people thinking 30 is the new 20, 40 is the new 30. Part of that comes from delaying the time frame in which we think that we're supposed to be getting ourselves ready. Now, back in the days, during the generation that is probably about 65 to 70 years old right now, when they were 20, they were starting families at 20, 22, 25 years old. They already had family, had kids, were married. They were working their career jobs, or whatever the case is. They started earlier. Now, granted, you were able to start earlier then because you didn't always need as much schooling to get started. But generally, even if you went to school, and I'm not saying that's the only way, but just from the perspective of if you're on point with everything, then by 22 or 23, you should be starting your career job because you could have either finished school at the time, or maybe you finished at least your bachelor's and you're extending school past that time, but maybe you're still working where you're doing it. But if you're on point with everything, or maybe you take a trade and you're able to get started by the age of 22, roughly, give or take a year, you could still be in that point where you're like, okay, 22 years old. I'm just going to use that as a roundabout, like I said, give or take a year, but 22 years old, I'm already getting started on my career job. I'm already making good money or decent money for my age, and I'm going to build and climb the ladder, and you get started soon. So I think a big aspect of that is not starting when you need to. And I think if we looked at the data, it would show that a lot of people are not really starting their career jobs or like knowing what they're going to do by that right age. Some key discussion points is normalizing alternative paths to wealth building, like investing, when solo home ownership before 30 is statistically out of reach for most. Navigating the rising financial logistics of later in life family planning. So it's pretty much saying that it's hard to even think of alternative ways to make money when you can't even investing in a home or whatever other means you would do. You can't even financially even handle that. So that's not almost not even an option. And then so family planning gets pushed back. I actually think I'm gonna hit on that key point in a second because I actually think family is actually the solution nowadays to a degree, not 100%, but to a degree. It always used to be, and it kind of still could be, but actionable angle or solution. It says shifting focus from rigid milestone deadlines to building high liquidity and career mobility, ensuring that when major life steps are taken, they don't compromise long-term goals. So just pretty much keeping your eye on the prize, starting early on, kind of like what I was saying before, starting young with your career, focusing so that way as you keep moving up the ladder and doing what you got to do, it doesn't really get inside the way of those goals. But going back to what I just said a moment ago, I think that family can be a key to getting past this, because that dynamic of family having two incomes in the household can definitely be a way to resolve this. But also too, there's a negative drawback to that. We're in the era now where a lot of couples don't last a grandparent's age, like I mentioned earlier inside the discussion, as far as people, grandparents people who are in grandparents' age right now, 70 years old or whatever, used to start young and they stayed together throughout the entire time. People don't really do that nowadays, so banking on that is a little bit hard. So I say it's a double-edged sword. So you got to take that with a grain of salt because, like I said, it could be your positive, it could be your pro, it could be your negative. Having two incomes in a household is great, but also could be a negative. Splitting that down the middle might simply be maybe having a roommate or a relative that you have a joined lifestyle with. So that way, like you guys are reaping the benefits of a double household income, but you aren't a couple. So that way, there's no risk or a little risk towards them screwing you over in that way because you aren't tied together financially. The only tie together is will they pay their half of the rent while you're paying your half of the rent, and they're not going to kind of screw you over. But outside of that, you're not tied to them financially, which is probably a good way to split the middle in terms of that decision of like, family versus not having a family in terms of building dynamics. But I will say also too, learning to budget correctly is a way to kind of navigate that. Do not try to take on things that you can't. Some people try to buy fancy things early on, buy a fancy car. I've seen a lot of people do that. When I was younger, starting a good 9 to 5, and a lot of people who were joining it with me at the same time in my career field, they all went and got brand new cars when they were like 23, 24 years old. Made no sense. Also, too, get a roommate if you need one, if you can't handle things financially, but it's learning to financially budget so that way you can make those goals. And understand, too, I think in this day and age, some of those goals are not necessarily the same. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have certain traditional goals if you want them, but at the same time, too, I think it's important to know that sometimes the way we do things might be differently. So, for example, some people might have the mindset back in the days of always, you get married, you have kids right away, and then, you go about trying to build things up, this and that. There's also nothing wrong with doing things in a mixed order where you're like, let me build up my financials good, build up my wealth, build up everything early, then maybe have the kids later. So that way, say if you're like 45 years old, you built up your finances so well that you're almost ready to retire at 45 or 50 years old. Now you have your kids as far as like as the man, because this is a man issue right here. This one that is saying about in terms of like a topic of discussion. This is something that men were toting around as an issue of discussion. Not to say that women don't deal with it, but from the perspective of men, you could have the mentality that, okay, you know what? I built myself up so well, focus on my finances so well, because you don't have to retire based on what society tells you at 70, 65 years old, or 70 years old. If you're doing what you need to do with your money, investing and whatever the case is, you can retire at like 45, 50 years old. Get to that point, retire at like say 50 years old, have your first child maybe at 45 years old. So 5 years from that time when you retire, you now could just take care of your kids without always being able to be there. Now you're going to every sports game, every event, everything like that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Essentially, you're getting the same end goal, but you are doing it in a reverse order. The only thing that's going to be a little different is your kids, are not going to have grandkids as soon as the time that you would expect it. But the reason why it still kind of works out is because financially now you could have probably put yourself in a position where not only are you able to help your kids, but help your grandkids. So they're able to have kids sooner. And that's how you kind of alleviate the issue where now you could say to your kids, listen, go have kids at 20 years old, at 18 years old, because guess what? As grandpa, I worked hard, have my finances up front. I'm ready for it. I'll take care of them. You go live your life, go do your thing, drop the grandkids off to me. I got them. Now it gives you your time with your grandkids. At that point, say if you, like I said, you have your first kid at like say 45 years old, 20 years later, you're 65 years old. You're like, give the grandkids to me. I'm already been retired for the last 20 years or 15 years. And I'm fine with that. Now it's giving your kids a head start. So either way, you're just reversing the order, but just staying just as focused, but just reversing the order for what works for you. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's like the best solution right there. Reversing the order if it works for you, but also finding a way to deal with your finances with either roommating, dealing with family as a way to kind of share expenses until you're able to be in a space where it's not a burden to you, as well as just not buying expensive things at a young age that don't that don't benefit you at all. And then also too, staying away from doing a bunch of vacations, 'cause a lot of people fall into that trap, the luxurious life of going on like 3 vacations a year. That will definitely stop you from your milestones, because that can easily be 5 grand per vacation. You do 3 of them per year at least, and then that's like $15,000. $15,000 almost every year. That adds up. You put that in a 401k, the compound interest of that is incredible. So be mindful of that. And put that in the comments down below, you guys, if this is something that you guys are thinking about, if this is something that you guys are facing, has been going through your mind because you are feeling like that pressure, and it's something you want to address, put them down below so we can have a discussion on it. As always, you guys, like, share, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next video.